Lewis Hamilton frustrated. Charles Leclerc losing faith. Ferrari divided just days before the United States Grand Prix, and inside Maranello, engineers calling the SF-25 a scarlet tragedy. Inside Ferrari, tension is no longer hidden behind the polished smiles of press conferences. It's tangible, like static in the air before a storm. What began as a few missed opportunities on track has spiraled into open discontent within the corridors of Maranello. Every department feels the weight of the season's disappointment. Engineers, strategists, and even senior management now move with caution, aware that any mistake could become tomorrow's headline. The once legendary harmony between Italian passion and precision engineering has fractured. Instead of collaboration, there's confrontation. Instead of trust, suspicion. And at the center of it all, the SF-25, once the symbol of Ferrari's rebirth, now stands as evidence of its decline. Fred Vasseur's leadership, once praised for its calm pragmatism, is now under fire. Reports from within the team describe heated exchanges between Vasseur and Matteo Tognanelli, the head of track engineering, moments after the Singapore race. The argument, according to insiders, wasn't about one failed pit stop or strategy. It was about the car itself. The SF-25 has proven unpredictable, unstable under braking, and too sensitive to changing temperatures. Vasseur insists on keeping morale high, but his words fall flat when the stopwatch tells a different story. Ferrari's engineers, some veterans of Schumacher's golden era, quietly say what no one dares to admit publicly. This car was flawed from the very moment its concept was drawn on paper. For Charles Leclerc, the frustration has reached boiling point. The Monégasque driver, who once embodied Ferrari's future, now questions the present. Others have moved forward, we haven't, he said after Singapore, his tone controlled but heavy with resignation. It's not anger, it's fatigue. He's spent years giving everything to a team that seems unable to give back. Leclerc's feedback has become more direct, his patience thinner. He feels the loss of trust between drivers and engineers, a silent wall growing in the garage. Every debrief ends with the same unanswered question. Where did it all go wrong? His disappointment isn't just personal, it's symbolic of the entire Ferrari culture struggling to adapt in a sport that evolves faster than its traditions. Hamilton's experience adds another layer of complexity. When he joined Ferrari, many believed he would bring not just talent, but a winning mentality, a culture of efficiency learned at Mercedes. But instead, he found himself in a system still trapped in bureaucracy and outdated hierarchies. We underestimated the transition, Vasseur admitted, referring to Hamilton's adaptation. Yet the real issue runs deeper. For a driver used to methodical precision, Ferrari's chaos has been an awakening. Hamilton's race engineers have changed setups from one session to the next with minimal explanation. Communication lines blur, decisions take too long, and data rarely matches performance. The seven-time champion has learned to drive around the car's limitations, but even he cannot outdrive dysfunction. The SF-25 itself is the mechanical embodiment of the problem. Its design, internally known as Project 677, was meant to close the gap to Red Bull through aerodynamic efficiency. And at high speed, it does. But in slower corners like those in Austin's final sector, it behaves like a completely different machine. Chronic understeer, erratic brake temperatures, and an extremely narrow performance window make it unpredictable. Ferrari's aerodynamic department complains that the chassis team ignored their warnings about airflow balance. The result? A car that is efficient in theory, but unstable in reality. One engineer described it bluntly: we build a car that's fast only when the universe aligns perfectly. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. And yet, the real danger for Ferrari isn't the car, it's the mindset that built it. Within the factory, morale is collapsing. Younger engineers, once full of ambition, now talk about leaving. Senior figures hesitate to take responsibility, fearing that another internal shakeup could cost them their jobs. The culture of fear, something Ferrari had worked hard to eliminate, has returned. The constant scrutiny from Italian media, the relentless comparisons with Mercedes and Red Bull, and the growing internal blame game have created an atmosphere where innovation feels risky and accountability feels fatal. It's a team paralyzed by its own legend, unable to decide whether to protect its image or rebuild from scratch. Ferrari's problems are no longer about pace, they're about physics. The SF-25 has become a case study in how precision engineering can collapse under the weight of complexity. At first glance, it's a work of art, elegant lines, minimal drag, a floor design that channels air with surgical precision. On paper, it should have been a rival to Red Bull's RB21. But in reality, that aerodynamic efficiency comes at a brutal cost. The car's stability depends on a microscopic window of conditions: perfect temperature, perfect ride height, perfect balance. Step outside that, and the SF25 becomes unpredictable, twitching under braking, sliding through corners, and overheating its tires within laps. Ferrari's wind tunnel data promised balance. The track delivered chaos. The braking system tells the story best. All season long, it's been a ghost haunting Ferrari's weekends. The problem isn't raw power, it's temperature asymmetry. In Singapore, Leclerc's car developed a thermal imbalance between the rear brakes, which cascaded forward and destabilized the entire chassis. The front wheels locked unpredictably, the rear axle overheated, and the whole car lost rhythm. Hamilton suffered the same curse, his front brakes failing completely in the final laps, forcing him to exceed track limits just to slow the car down. Those weren't driver errors, they were symptoms of a design that cannot breathe under pressure. In Austin, with its heavy braking zones into turns 1, 11, and 12, those flaws will resurface in full view of the world. Understeer has become the second chronic wound. The SF25 resists rotation at low speed like a stubborn mule. Ferrari's engineers tried to cure it by adjusting suspension geometry, shifting weight balance forward, even experimenting with softer compounds. Nothing worked. The issue lies deeper in the car's mechanical platform. The front end lacks the precision needed to follow driver inputs in slow corners, while the rear end oscillates, making traction unpredictable. On circuits like Coda, with its technical third sector of linked low-speed bends, that weakness will cost Ferrari half a second per lap or more. It's not just a handling problem, it's an identity crisis. This car was designed to be quick everywhere, and now it's quick nowhere. Inside the technical division, the finger-pointing has reached a fever pitch. Aerodynamicists claim the chassis department ignored airflow simulations. Chassis engineers argue the Aero Group demanded impossible packaging compromises. The result is a car that's efficient in a straight line, but aerodynamically unstable through the rotation moments that occur mid-corner. That instability forces the drivers to compensate constantly, wearing down tires and confidence alike. One insider described it as trying to race on ice while blindfolded. It's not an exaggeration. Even in qualifying trim, where Ferrari can mask its weaknesses with low fuel and fresh tires, the SF25 feels unpredictable. Over a race distance, those flaws become fatal. Budget constraints have only deepened the wound. Ferrari has already exhausted its development allocation for the season, redirecting most of its resources toward the 2026 car. That decision, though logical long-term, has frozen the SF25's evolution. What remains are superficial adjustments, minor tweaks to brake ducts, wing angles, and ride height calibration. No structural redesigns, no new floor concept, no suspension rework. Engineers describe their current role as maintenance mode. They're not improving the car. They're preventing it from getting worse. That stagnation has crushed morale. The development group that once led Formula One's innovation race now operates like a support crew, maintaining a car they no longer believe in. There comes a moment in every season when a team stops fighting for the present and starts building for survival. For Ferrari, that moment has arrived. The decision came quietly, buried beneath technical jargon and corporate phrasing, but the meaning was unmistakable. The SF25 is finished. Fred Vasseur, faced with mounting pressure and internal fatigue, has shifted the majority of Ferrari's resources to the 2026 project. What that means, in plain terms, is that the team has surrendered the current year. Every engineer, every analyst, every simulator session from now on is focused not on fixing the flaws of the SF25, but on ensuring its mistakes are never repeated. The car that was supposed to resurrect Ferrari's dominance will instead become a cautionary tale in the archives of Maranello. Inside the factory, this shift has landed like a silent earthquake. On the surface, operations continue as usual: meetings, telemetry briefings, and press communications. But behind closed doors, the atmosphere is heavy. Engineers speak in whispers, aware that the project they've spent a year building has been effectively abandoned. The phrase circulating through the design office is brutal: strategic surrender. Some call it pragmatic, others call it cowardice. But everyone agrees it's a turning point. Ferrari's leadership has accepted that there is no quick fix, that no upgrade can salvage a flawed foundation. It's a decision that might make sense on paper, but to the men and women who live for competition, it feels like defeat. The consequences go beyond morale. When a Formula One team stops believing in its own car, it loses its rhythm, its identity, and its sense of purpose. Mechanics who once worked late into the night now wonder what they're working for. The simulation department runs numbers knowing they won't matter. Even the test drivers, usually the first to provide optimism, now report that setup changes bring no measurable improvement. The SF-25 has become more than a bad car, it's a symbol of what Ferrari has been trying to escape for years: inconsistency, internal politics, and misplaced confidence. The numbers don't lie, but what they don't show is the exhaustion behind every failed attempt to find stability. Lewis Hamilton's reaction to this internal retreat has been restrained but cutting. Privately, he's been described as disappointed but not surprised. He's seen this pattern before, teams retreating under pressure instead of attacking their weaknesses. Hamilton joined Ferrari to rewrite history, not to become part of another rebuilding era. His frustration isn't directed at individuals, it's directed at the system itself, the endless loop of reinvention without transformation. For a driver who measures time and victories, 2 years of waiting is an eternity. Yet in this resignation, he also recognizes opportunity. If Ferrari truly commits to 2026, Hamilton could help shape that revolution if he chooses to stay long enough to see it through. Leclerc's response has been more emotional. For him, Ferrari is more than a team, it's a promise he's carried since childhood. To see that promise deferred once again cuts deep. His comments after Singapore weren't random outbursts, they were the voice of a man who has reached the limit of belief. His tone in media sessions has shifted from defensive to distant. There's still respect, still professionalism, but the fire that once defined him seems dimmer. For the first time, there's a real question about his future loyalty. He's not threatening to leave, but he no longer speaks as if staying is guaranteed. That uncertainty echoes through the garage like an unspoken truth. And then there's Vasseur himself, caught in the middle of a storm he helped create. His leadership has always been pragmatic, focused on long-term rebuilding rather than short-term glory. But Formula One is not a patient sport. The Tifosi, the Italian press, and the shareholders of Ferrari demand results now, not promises of next year. By redirecting the budget toward 2026, Vasseur has effectively traded credibility for control. He's betting everything on the next regulation era, a gamble that could define his legacy as either Ferrari's savior or its scapegoat. It's a dangerous position, but one he seems willing to accept.